He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Boehner and Obama are meeting at the White House. That's a very, very scary thing. Chuck Hagel, the former pathetic senator from Nebraska, Republican, is apparently going to be the next nominee for the Department of Defense. What Obama does is he picks the worst of the Republicans and then puts them in his government. What kind of a Republican would work for Obama anyway, as he's hollowing out the Defense Department? So he puts a Republican in charge of that, so it's bipartisan. I want to spend most of this hour on economics. All right, don't let your eyes roll over. What's going on in Washington today relates to basic economics. It's absolutely relevant. And these politicians are spinning what happened during the Bush period, during the Reagan period, particularly this Jay Carney. He's made a number of outrageous comments, and they repeat themselves, and so we get these big lies. So the middle class suffered, you see, because of tax cuts. And, of course, we know the middle class is suffering under Obama, and I'll get to that in a moment. Everybody wasn't alive during the Reagan period. A lot of people forget what happened under George W. Bush when he cut taxes. Also, there's this constant lying about Clinton's record, Clinton's policies. Clinton raised taxes and we had economic growth. I'm going to address all of this hour, all of it. So one of the things I try and do in this program is kick it up several notches on a substantive and intellectual point of view. So this is one of those hours. And in this regard, a great piece in Forbes, about a year ago or so, by our buddy Peter Ferrara. And the title of his essay is Reaganomics versus Obamanomics. And folks, this is really worth listening to because this is the contrast between efforts to promote free market capitalism and efforts to promote big government statism. Liberty versus tyranny. And he points out that when Reagan entered office in 1981, he faced actually much worse economic problems than Obama faced in 2009. 3 worsening recessions starting in 1969 were about to culminate in the worst of all in 1981-82, with unemployment soaring into double digits, peaking at 10.8%. At the same time, America suffered roaring double-digit inflation. 11.3% in 1979, 13.5% in 1980. That's 25% in 2 years. The Washington establishment at the time argued that the inflation was now endemic to the American economy and couldn't be stopped, at least not without a calamitous economic collapse. Now, all of this was accompanied by double-digit interest rates, with the prime rate peaking at 21.5% in 1980. I want you to imagine all this going on today. The poverty rate in America started increasing in 1978, eventually climbing by an astounding 33%, from 11.4% to 15.2%. A fall in real median family income began in 1978, snowballed to a decline of almost 10% by 1982. In addition, from 1968 to 1982, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 70% of its real value, reflecting an overall collapse of stocks. You see, we have to go back to history for context. Because if you listen to Obama and his mouthpieces, Jay Carney among others, you would think the economy at the end of the Bush era and the beginning of the Obama era were the worst. They were not. The Carter years were the worst. And when Reagan stepped into office, it was a disaster, and he had to deal with it. So what did he do? Reagan campaigned on an explicitly articulated 4-point economic program to reverse the slow-motion collapse of the American economy. First, cut tax rates to restore incentives for economic growth, which was implemented first with a reduction in the top income tax rate of 70% down to 50%, and then a 25% across-the-board reduction in income tax rates for everyone. Then the 1986 tax reform reduced tax rates further, leaving just two rates, 28% and 15%. The most revolutionary reduction of tax rates in modern American history. 28% and 15%. Reagan would have none of this talk about tax cuts for the rich and defending the middle class. His view was lower them all, cut them to two classes, period. Number two, spending reductions. Yes, spending reductions, including a $31 billion cut in spending in 1981, close to 5% of the federal budget back then, or the equivalent of about $175 billion in spending cuts for the year today. In constant dollars, non-defense discretionary spending declined by 14.4% from 1981 to 1982, by 16.8% from 1981 to 1983. I'm not asking you, obviously, to memorize this stuff. I can't memorize it. But I'm trying to show you, even if you have a general understanding of this, what Reagan did. He slashed taxes and he slashed non-defense spending. In constant dollars, this non-defense discretionary spending never returned to its 1981 level for the rest of Reagan's two terms. Even with the Reagan defense buildup, which won the Cold War without firing a shot, total federal spending declined from a high of 23.5% of the GDP in 1983 to 21.3% in 1988 and 21.2% in 1989. That's a real reduction in the size of government relative to the economy of 10%. Number three, Reagan pushed anti-inflation monetary policy, restraining money supply growth compared to demand to maintain a stronger, more stable dollar. See, and what's happening today is exactly the opposite. Massive printing. And number four, deregulation. Deregulation saved consumers an estimated $100 billion per year in lower prices. In fact, Reagan's first executive order eliminated price controls on oil and natural gas. Production soared. And aided by a strong dollar, the price of oil declined by more than 50%. Now, these economic policies amounted to the most successful economic experiment in world history. The Reagan recovery started in official records in November 1982 and lasted 92 months. 92 months without a recession until July 1990, when the tax increases of the 1990 budget deal killed it. That was the George H.W. Bush and Democrat Congress tax increases, where he went back on his read my lips, no new taxes pledge. This set a new record for the longest peacetime expansion ever. The previous high in peacetime had been 58 months. Under Reagan, 92 months. Now, during this 7-year recovery, the economy grew by almost 1/3, the equivalent of adding the entire economy of then West Germany, which was the third largest economy in the world at the time. In 1984 alone, real economic growth boomed by 6.8%, the highest in 50 years.